beginning from the third Sunday in the season of Lent and continuing on the fourth and the fifth before Passion Sunday, the gospel is always from the Gospel of John. And the reason why the church chooses from the Gospel of John on these 3 Sundays leading on to Passion Sunday is because the Gospel of John is a gospel that is rich in content, and the church wants us to reflect on the aspect of Jesus that is portrayed in this gospel. In the first reading that is taken from the book of Exodus, we hear complaints. The people are tormented by physical thirst. The people are thirsty. The people are not sated. The people want their needs to be satisfied. And because they have forgotten the God who brought them out of Egypt and is now leading them to the promised land, because they have forgotten the goodness of the Lord, they begin to complain against Moses and against Aaron and against God himself. They allege that their God has brought them out to punish them. Their God has brought them out to kill them. Their God has brought them out to ensure that they suffer and die. So they keep talking and asking for proof. They keep contending with God. And Moses turns to the one whom he knows he receives everything from, and that is God. And in his anguish, Moses asks God to give the people what they need. And because even the God as portrayed in the Old Testament is a generous God, even if the people are ungrateful, if the people are impatient, God responds to this prayer of Moses and asks Moses to strike the rock from which people get water. After their thirst is satisfied, they are able once again to believe that God is on their side. However, it is only a physical thirst. It is a thirst which satisfies only the external body. We will hear about a much, much deeper thirst in the gospel text of today. However, Moses wants the people to remember that they had asked for a proof of God, and so he names the place Massah, which is translated as testing or asking proof of God. And he named the place Meribah, which is translated contention, because the people had contended, the people had fought with, the people had complained against God. So whenever the terms Massah and Meribah are heard, this is what would come into the minds of the people, that they asked God for proof. They began to fight with God when their needs were not fulfilled. In the gospel text of today, which is one of the most beautiful texts, we come across the dialogue which Jesus has with a woman of Samaria. There were 2 problems already at the initial stage of the dialogue, and the first was that Jesus was talking alone with a woman, which was not very usual at the time of Jesus. And second, it was a Samaritan, a person who was considered an outcast, a person who was considered not really part of the chosen people, and Jesus was conversing with her. The reason why Jesus could do this is because Jesus was beyond all kinds of categories. Jesus was able to see in a person, a human being, and an image of God, and so responded to the person as he would respond to God himself, not merely with respect, but more importantly with love. And so Jesus initiates this dialogue by asking the woman for a drink of water, because the woman is near a well and she is drawing water from the well. Jesus asks for physical water only so that he can take the woman to a deeper level, and that is the level of asking for spiritual water. The woman obviously does not know who Jesus is, and so responds to Jesus like anyone would respond on the surface level. She is surprised that he, not being of her tribe, that he being one of those so-called chosen people, could dare to converse with her and ask her for water. And then Jesus realizes that because she responds, she is going to be open to the revelation that he is making, and she first calls him Sir. She first uses a respectable title for him to indicate that she respects him as a person as well. Jesus invites her not merely to drink from this well which will satisfy physical thirst, but to drink from the water which he can give, which will satisfy the thirst of the heart, the thirst of the mind, the inner thirst that all of us are seeking for. As the discussion continues, she talks about worshipping, and Jesus takes her not merely from the external worship which is done with our external being and in an external temple, but to worship in spirit, in the heart, and to worship in truth. The words of Jesus touch her heart. The words of Jesus make an impact on her, and she realizes that Jesus is a prophet when he asks her to call her husband, and she realizes that the person whom she is living with is not really a husband. So her insight is that Jesus has insight into her. This leads her to give the second title to Jesus. So she moves now from the title of Sir to the title of prophet. Though she uses prophet in the sense that Jesus can see what is beyond, that Jesus can see what is in her heart, she does not really know that the word prophet actually means one who speaks on behalf of God. She has not yet come to that realization. When Jesus takes her further into the discussion, she is able to make that realization, and she responds now by calling Jesus the Messiah. She is able to see in the words of Jesus, in the manner in which Jesus responds, that Jesus is not merely Sir, the respectable title. Jesus is not merely the prophet, the one who speaks on behalf of God, but Jesus is the Messiah, the one who has been sent by God. The English word Messiah comes from the Greek Messiah, from the Hebrew Messiah, which in turn comes from the Greek Christos and means in English the anointed one. When she asks the question, which is actually a rhetorical question, as she goes back to her townspeople as the first missionary in the Gospel of John, she asks them this rhetorical question: could this be the Messiah? And the people are taken in with her exposition of Jesus. The people listen to her explanation of who Jesus is, and they all rush to meet him. And here we come across something which is extremely important for every one of us. That is, the people encounter Jesus. The people meet Jesus. The people converse and dialogue with Jesus. And after they have done that, they say to the woman, we believe now, not only because you told us, not merely because of the revelation you have made to us, but because we ourselves have seen and experienced. We need to ask ourselves about our own relationship with God. Are we like the people in the first reading of today? Will the places in which we live be also termed as Massa and Meribah, as those places and those times when we ask the proof from God that He is on our side, when we keep on contending and fighting with God when we do not get our needs or what we want? Or will we, like the Samaritan woman, recognize that Jesus is not merely a sir, He is not merely a prophet, He is the Messiah, yes, but more importantly, the Messiah who has been sent by God to give, not merely like Moses gave, physical water which satisfies physical needs of the body, but to give both the physical water, to give the spiritual water, and to let streams of water flow from those who believe.